Chapter 13 of Work, Family and Tribulations. After the death of Muigai, Major K. Kibuja, with whom we had shared an office for 3 years, resigned and joined Kenya National Trading Corporation in Eldoret. Kimani was long gone to Murang'a Labor Office. Labor Inspector Mr. Maumau was on leave. Nyenda, the ID issuer, had been incapacitated by heavy drinking, and his wife was arranging to relocate to the family in Kisumu. Kinyanya, the other Kamba officer, was also a drunk, used to report to the office of noon. He will come with a swollen face and red eyes. In the office, was virtually alone with also Dania office messengers and Gugi Dirima, the driver, away. I was also called from Jogoo House and told to execute the tripartite agreement between the government and Kotu, whereby workforce was to be increased by 10% in all sectors. Work seekers came in droves. I prepared all documentation and sent them to different sectors, commensurating to the number of workers every sector had employed, and increased workers by 10%. After that exercise, I was passing near a dry cleaner where Daisy, a girlfriend of mine, worked. She beckoned me in and told to go to stand back and do an interview. I had just completed the tripod task. I had fixed some young man in a bank, and I know I was required in the bank. I did not have O-level certificate with credits in English, Math, and another one subject, History or Geography. Since I did not have that, I ignored what Daisy had told me. The next day, I bumped into Daisy again with her reminder of the interview. I declined the request. On the third day, she told me they had to do it, since all the people working in public offices in Kiambu Town had done it. I declined again, but just like Jerry at Kipande House, she insisted the fourth day. I agreed. I gathered courage, entered the bank and inquired. I was taken upstairs in the manager's office. So the manager, a European William Gerald Bernard, who called Miss Davis a European young girl who was heavily pregnant, and told her to give me a test. I did the test, left and forgot about it, just like Kipande House. In the context of those two incidents, there were similarities because I just relaxed. Then my husband, in his cruel mind towards me, wrote a very long letter to the Ministry of Labor, ordering them to sack me with immediate effect. He said does not want his wife to continue working and wanted her to stay at home. One early morning, I received a call from Jogoo House, and the caller on the other end said, "Kaire tugakwa, we have received a very long letter from your husband instructing us to sack you with immediate effect, but we cannot do that. We shall not sack him. This is a cruel man who wants to punish you, but we shall not allow him to do so. We want you to write with your own handwriting and tell us you do not want to continue with your work. If you have to continue, write and tell us." I asked him who I'm talking to. He said, "The PS Mutegi." "And why did you call me Keretu Gakwa, my little girl?" He said, "Because my firstborn daughter, whom I love very much, is also known Duta, just like you." Mr. Mutegi might have heard it. I was living in a constant life. I wrote a letter immediately and told them I wanted to continue with my work. No sooner had I dispatched that letter to Jogoo House, then I saw the bank accountant majestically walking towards my office with a big envelope. He came right in and handed over the envelope to me. "The bank manager wants to see you. Keep the envelope in the drawer. Let us go first because he wants you now, and he told me not to leave you." I thought, wow, God has remembered me again as I go through a crisis of a husband and a meaning to me to the employer. I was torn into two. I had just written and said I'll continue working, but the deal here was too good to ignore. I accompanied Mr. Kisia to the bank. Mr. W.G. Bernard was very happy when he saw me. He asked me, "Are you Mary?" I said, "Yes, I am, sir." Then he said, "I have started to employ you. Will you accept my offer?" I said, "Yes." Then he asked me, "Will you give your employer 1 month notice?" Then he quickly said, "But I need you here immediately. Do you have leave days?" I told him I had 30 days leave. He told me to surrender the 30 days in lieu of notice, and that is what I did. I joined Standard Chartered Bank, again Africanized Miss Davis, whose work permit was not renewed. Just like in labor office, that interview had been done by 200 women who were in public office, and I'm the only one who got it. Surely it was God's providence to me, though people had difficult ideas, even them, because men in that bank were all workers were men, just like labor office. They said her husband bribed the accountant, Mr. Kisia. They really don't know that the husband they were referring to had already tried to order my sacking in the ministry. When Leonard discovered I had joined the bank, his jealousy and madness went a notch higher. This time around, he was a married man and his wife was a teacher, but he never relented even a single day. He had continued with his evil schemes. No sooner had I started working in the bank, then he started calling the bank phone number relentlessly. I'm the one who received all calls. Then he directed at one to the other officers. When he discovered that, he made it active to be calling every day, several times until he gets tired. I banged them all. He became more aggressive with his evil schemes. I was later told by a friend of Joe that he used to strategically come a little before my reporting time and profiled me as I got to the office. My parents knew all was happening to me and summoned me home before I joined the bank. They told me not to leave the civil service because that is a government job, which has already helped me decline to sack me. They argued that the bank was a company and anytime Joe wanted me to be sacked immediately, but I made them understand even the bank was just like the civil service. Nobody will tell them to sack me. They also knew Kim had engaged a higher guy in his evil schemes. He was a thorn in the flesh of every member of the family. In the meantime, banks were being attacked by thieves. W.G. Bernard, who had all the traits of a colonist, always had these guns strapped on his waist as he walked around the bank in the white eyelashes and blue eyes to counter any robbers who may attack. Luckily, the master robber was having his account in our bank. Therefore, he did it to send the robbers to our bank except for one day. Jenga Karume accountant was way loud as he bought in a weekend takings. He was robbed outside as they made their way to the bank. In the meantime, there was no relenting in buffering security. Due to the challenges I was facing, my mom got so stressed until she fell sick. After a while, E.G. Bernard was transferred to the city. In his place came M. Geoffrey Eric Lake. He looked different from W.G. Bernard. He was born in Kenya and soon he was nicknamed Zaliwa. And to his pleasant demeanor, he was friendly and a cool guy. The weekend before he came, two wives of Joe's cousin came over to the office on a Saturday and told me to join them so we could attend a wedding of a local girl who was getting married in Gatundu. Mama John, one of the ladies, told me we were to use our car in the company of Mr. and Mrs. Doku. Their car was a sub which had to sit off two people at the back. Therefore, Mama Kinge, Kibuge's wife, and I set ourselves on that back seat and enjoyed the ride so much since we were viewing all landscape very well facing the back. We got home late and went to the shop, bought flour and sugar. I didn't have a housemaid, therefore I woke up early next morning, which was Sunday, went to the river, drew water, came and put some water on the cooker for tea. As I cleaned utensils, Joe's young sister came from the gutter to visit, but since all people had gone to church for the mass, she came to my house and after a little while, she was joined by their grandfather. They made themselves comfortable on a stone platform outside the house as I washed the utensils as well as asking for tea for all of us. I sat baby Frank Mochai on the floor of the kitchen as I worked. Davis was outside there with the visitors. After a while, Joe drove in at a very high speed and as he stopped the car, it jerked as he came straight into the kitchen. He didn't even notice the visitors. He kicked and hit me with whatever he could lay his hands on. His grandfather came and tried to stop him, but he brushed him off. His sister came, but a pot of last night porridge landed on her back. The child she was carrying was eating the porridge on her back. An agent of his noticed the commotion and came in, tried to stop in vain, but while he held him, I rushed uphill towards his mother's house. He released himself and ran after me with a very big stone. I tripped and I fell. He flung the stone which missed my head by a whisker. The little David came running calling, "Mom!" Miss Nyachai Mbugo, a neighbor across the road, had heard the commotion and ran full speed. By then, he was strangling me. Nyachai screamed and held both of his arms and released me. She angrily scolded me for all he had been doing to me. He then got into the car and started it and drove up the hill in full speed. Nobody knows what he was up to since he was not talking. He drove up to the home of Mama John. She also had visitors from Mongata Rongai. Their aunt and a cousin, they were all outside the house. When Mama John saw the speed with which he was driving, they all ran to the coffee farm. He was stretched to a stop and started throwing empty bottles of beer to them. Mama John tried to sweet-talk him. "Baba Kinges, please tell me why you are throwing off bottles to us. What have you done to you?" That is when he responded to her. "Your husband carried my wife yesterday and took her to Thika. They spent the night at Thika. I went looking for them when my car broke down on Thika Road. Then they came past me and even didn't stop." Mama John thought he was mad. She told him that I was one of those who went to the wedding and came back all of my husband and spent the night. "I'll kill him today," he said. John said he had gone to the shop to find him there. He moved at the top speed of the shops where he found Josephat Kinodia. He attacked him with vitriol. When the people heard what he was saying, they will assured him and told him to behave like a rich man. The shopkeeper told him, all people came back from the wedding and your wife came and bought flour for the children and sugar. I later heard he was fined a goat by the elders for misbehaving. I went and hid in the bush. He then came back cool and asked, where is Mary? His little brother Njoroge knew where I was hiding. He came and told me, he's asking for you but don't go. I then left, but the dress I was wearing was full of blood stains. I went to Kiambu town where I slept under a tree for several hours, then went and got treated because he had perforated the side of my mouth with a bite. The Asian doctor Ibrahim treated me and put a bandage, but blood was still oozing. I then went to Kiambu clothing shop where he was seen in partnership with his evil friends. Njoroge was a butler and was one in the shop. When he saw the way I looked like as a train had hit me, burst into laughter and asked, is he the one who did this to you? I immediately felt he's the one who misled the madman because Joseph's car was parked outside the shop when we all boarded. On the other hand, even before he talked, maybe he was told, Kianuma carried your wife, making him lose his mind for more than 24 hours. Regardless of what had befallen him, was determined to keep the marriage. My parents realized it was a hopeless case and urged me to go back home. I argued that I got into that marriage that I cannot give up after all. People would start calling me a prostitute since I was still a young girl. The other hurdle was I couldn't get myself into another marriage since I couldn't stand mistreatment of my children on the local radio. Those days there were a series of a story going on titled Mapenzi Hatari Hadithi ya Kusisimua ya Ajabu. I thought, however, wrote that story knew me and was mocking me, but it was written by a Tanzania author. Every narration of the story was in line with what I was experiencing. Back to the shop. Njoroge gave me a material which I put on top of the other, but my mouth injury was still leaking blood. Soon that also had blood stains. I continued thinking where to go, but at 4 p.m. I decided to go back to Githongori that my brother Albert, who wondered loudly, "Newaiga wagweka." I lied to him that it was a result of a car accident, but when he got home, my mother was clever. She screamed, "Newaiga wagweka." Is it Waiganjo who did this to you? Immediately, Albert knew I hadn't told him the truth. He became so annoyed and told me that I needed to stop going home because he had earlier warned me. The following Monday, I went to office from Githongori. The same day, Geoffrey and Ella reported to office. After orientation, he knew all staff members but me, since I was working as a manager's secretary. He was so close to me and asked me what had hurt me. I lied to him that I was digging in the garden and a trench branch broke leaves and fell on me. Later, he asked me where I lived. I told him across the river opposite Kiambu town. He implied, Kisia told me you live in Githongori at your parents' home. Mr. Kisia also told me that your husband is very cruel and brute. He beats you every day. I felt so ashamed, but when he was very sympathetic with my situation, he developed a liking for me. He was very happy for whatever time I did for him. His beautiful wife Lillian, their 3 daughters used to visit him at the office. His wife had a health problem and she was hospitalized for 3 times in a month. He told me Lillian was very sick. The next day he said, she's now out of danger. I asked him, where was she suffering from? And he said, red blood cells are eaten by white blood cells. She was hospitalized again. Nganga was another light-colored, handsome man with spectacles. He was asthmatic. Doctors advised him against drinking hard alcohol, which aggravated his condition. Accounts flat was above then, khaki in the same building. Nganga had a beautiful wife with 3 beautiful daughters. On a Saturday, he was a very jolly man and talked nicely to every staff member. That evening, he went drinking a bar which is next to the bank. Then later went upstairs to his house, collected 3 empty bottles and gave to his girls plus money and told them to go down to the bar, buy him more beer. He took the 3 bottles then collapsed. Kiambu Hospital was just across the road. By the time they arrived in the hospital, he was pronounced dead. After 1 week, led by our manager, Mr. G. Lee, we all headed to Gatondo Kamwangi where he was buried. Mr. Lloyd treated us with sumptuous dinner in December 12th, hotel in Thika town, then headed home. After a few weeks, death struck our office again, where Lillian also died of leukemia. Again, we all headed to All Saints Cathedral for remaining mass, then to Langata Cemetery, where she was laid to rest. It was a terrible blow to Mr. Lee and his girls, who he fondly referred to as my 3 little darlings. After Lillian's demise, Mr. Lee received about 700 letters from Britain. Nearly all those condolences letters, they were concerned mostly with the children. They all wanted the girls sent back to Britain for safety, but their father had totally differed with them, telling them Kenya is as peaceful as Britain and the girls were safe. He even told them that Kenya is the second home and that since Leland interned here, he'll never leave Kenya. We dealt with those letters for a whole month. We are both leaving the office at 8 p.m. every day until that task was over. Mr. Lee used to take me to our rural backwater, then drive himself up to Gong Road, Rara Gardens, where his residence was. He respected and liked me so much that he used to wonder how anybody would be so cruel to me because I was unhappy and I used to cry every day in the office. He never knew I was terrorized by two spiteful idiots and would ask me every morning, "Mary, did your husband beat you yesterday?" Because of the way he was behaving and the fact all the other staff members were men, they were all jealous and kept asking when he was away, "Why does he like you so much?" And I thought, my God knows and can answer that question. As time went by, Mr. Lee had booked their usual overseas leave. He had booked a journey for 2 as usual. But unfortunately, Lillian passed on before. In the meantime, after the latter's task was so pleased that he bought me designer perfume. Nina Rigi, what a designer beautiful butterfly medallion. I felt sick, I was coughing, I was very sick and I was unable to go to office for a whole week. Joe was allowing the devil to use him because when I coughed at night, he could say, "Why don't you drop dead?" But when I went back to the office, Mr. Lee inquired where I was suffering from and what the doctor said. I told him the doctor diagnosed me with malaria. He was so sorry and sympathetic with me. He bought me an anti-malaria dose to take it for 52 days, which I did. As time passed, his leave was nearing. I sat into his office and he was averse with the impending journey and showed me the luxury ship he'll use while sailing from Cape Town, South Africa to Britain. He lamented about being in the sea for 3 weeks alone. The inside of the luxury ship was like a big playground. He showed me where his cabin and was then the cinema, theater, the kitchen, the tennis court, the dining room, the library, etc. Then told me very sadly, "I'll spend most of my time there." He pointed to a corner. I asked him what was there at that corner. He said, "It's a bar." I really pitied him that time and thought he would drown himself with alcohol due to the grief, but how could I have helped him? My builders were worsening by the day, especially due to the rumor passed by male workmates that Muzungu was on head over heels with me. Every morning when he came in, I pitied him and thought that my case was sad as it was. I had 2 toddlers and one was yet weaned every morning when I saw him and he was handsome. I silently sang, "Do not let me cross that ceiling line. I know I love you, not a dream will have left, but let me cross over that ceiling line. I know one step closer if the heavens divine, while your eyes keep saying that you love me too. I know if I lose you, not dream will I have left. Don't let me cross over that ceiling line." He never knew I was silent naming that song, though I did not know the whole of it, but I hushed the words I knew silently. Then one day he gathered all the courage and told me, "If you change your mind, I can go with you." Eventually, he will ask that question, but I had my 2 boys to take care about. I didn't say anything and thought he'll consider my toddlers, which he didn't because after a few days he told me, "I give you 2 weeks to give me that answer." I thought within those 2 weeks he will tell me something about my kids, but instead he said, "If I'm deported, we shall go and live in this house." Then told me we shall take a flight from Embakasi Airport to Jansport International Airport in Johannesburg, South Africa. Then we board a lorry ship to Britain. The deal was so good, but I could not leave my kids, especially the one who was not weaned. After 2 weeks, he called me and asked me for answer, but I sadly told him I could not change my mind. He broke down and teared. I felt so bad, so I could not help myself also. He proceeded on his 1-year leave. A cruel man came in to relieve him and gave us a lot of headache for that 1 year. He behaved like Muigai aka Karori of Labor Office. He was harsh to everybody. After 1 year, Mr. Lee came back and resumed his duties. He was as jovial to me as before. This time around I was in the provincial cloud 9 waiting for my 3rd born. The tenderness and the beauty in that situation of mine made me go to a notch higher in his craziness until men, workmates revived the early jealousy whereby they started asking me why he liked me so much. Is this pregnancy his? I just told them to wait until the baby comes to confirm whether it is. What they didn't know is that I never knew a wet man's nakedness, but there was no need of explaining anything with them. He started asking me when my baby was due. I told him, but he still kept asking me even when my baby was due. He told me he would send me a very beautiful card. True to his word, he sent me a very beautiful baby girl treasure, which was beautiful pictures with very nice things written against every day of the week. When it was brought, Joe said, "That envelope has money." I said, "There's no money." He insisted there was 200 shillings, which was so much those days, but I told him there's no money. He asked me, "What is there?" I said there was a card. When I opened the envelope, there was a beautiful card. Mr. Lee was a man of his words.